I didn't realize that at the time, but they had me take they had me take the oath because I didn't really understand honestly what was going on. But it's a pretty generic oath, but it's the uh, s- uh, defend the defenseless, serve the community, and speak the truth, even if it leads to your death. Um,
Welcome to Metaverse Degen. I'm Lion, and there's no rap today. He's currently doing some stuff with family, but we are here joined by our wonderful guest.
Hello, hi, I'm BTEX.
Oh, thank you very much for joining me today, BTEX. It's wonderful to meet you.
Thank you, thanks for having me. Really an honor to be approached for this sort of thing. I
Oh,
saw some of your other content, and you had some interesting folk on here.
well, thank you. I'm honored that you'd even want to give us the time. I want to be honest. Oh, well,
It's a lovely Tuesday, anyways.
indeed.
Yeah,
Let's jump to the meat and potatoes of the conversation. What are you most known for? How'd you get started, and what brought you to VRChat?
I am not known. I am a cryptid of VRChat. No, at this point, I've been on VRChat for a few years, but the thing I'm most known for now at this point is Degen Tech. I've been running meetups for that group for a few years now. That group is a group for working STEM professionals, working furry STEM professionals on VRChat. STEM is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medical. So we just have a bunch of the techiest, brightest, nerdiest dorks you can meet on VRChat. We just try to hang out. We have monthly meetups, and we have a bit of a lecture series going as a part of it. You can find us on YouTube, and right now we have a Blue Sky account.
Oh,
Most of our stuff is organized on Discord at this point, but come on by to one of our meetups and check out what we have.
oh. So what got you started with the group, and what got you here to VRChat?
Um, Getting into VRChat was its own story, but getting the group started was something that early on I realized was one of the cool utilities and powers of VR is that it really closes the gap with a lot of people. It allows you to have a much more interpersonal experience with people from far away. So you end up having a great diversity of people that you may not have in your real more immediate life. So I basically was meeting scientists more or less right away when I got into VRChat. My initial goal is my background's in chemistry, so I tried to meet with chemists. But as time went on, these people just kind of have an interest in talking to one another. It's not always. It's honestly rarely for professional reasons. It's more of just that they have shared experiences of going through academia and they can kind of talk similar language and go through similar frustrations. Nobody knows anybody's specialization, or nobody knows anybody else's job as specialists, but they all know the similar trials and tribulations of being a specialist. And it's been a while now. It's kind of weird to think I've been on VRChat for like 4 years.
Oh, really? You've been in VRChat 4 years?
Yeah, yeah. I got into it just before COVID started.
Hmm.
I had a friend of mine in real life recommend VR to me. A little ironic that person doesn't really like furries because I kind of knew what I was getting into as soon as I got the headset. I immediately knew which community I wanted to get into. The one thing that was a bit of a hiccup was that I actually got into a car accident not long before this. I got the idea to get a VR headset, and around that time, on a work trip, I got hit rear-ended by a car while driving on the freeway, and I had some really bad whiplash for a while. I had to
Oh,
do physical therapy for a few months, and towards the end of it, when as a reward to myself, I got myself the Quest 2. It was like it seemed to be the most affordable thing, but man, within a month, I bought the Index.
oh wow.
So I really fell in love with this place pretty much immediately.
Oh wow. So from when you
Yeah.
first hopped into the creation of the group, what led to the group creation? Like what made you from meeting other professionals led to the group becoming a thing?
Um, one of the things I wanted to do right away, I was a bit socially isolated at the time. COVID, if anything, of course, made it worse. So I really wanted to connect and meet people on VR, and that's exactly what happened for good and bad. I ended up having a number of scientist friends through the initial, like, let's say 12 months of VR. And at some point, I was talking with one of them. I invited a couple of my science friends to be like, "Hey, meet this chemist." So when I told him I was doing that, he was like, "Oh, wait, hold on, I met these guys." So then he brought in like three additional people, and in my mind, that was the first real Degen Tech meetup. I didn't have the group, I didn't have the name, I didn't have anything set up for it, but randomly we were just talking on some random Thursday afternoon, and we had seven people who were fairly advanced and competent in their fields. We were at the time it was still all chemists and biologists because I'm a biochemist. That's who I can talk to the best. But from that time onwards, I started trying to be a little bit more intentional in the networking. Before that, I was always trying to network, but then I was trying to make a mission statement out of it. And then from there, it's been stages of acceleration because there's also one of the problems of being a working professional is I'm kind of busy. I hang on in the VR space because I travel for work. So this is some way for me to stay grounded in some sort of social circle and stay grounded and connected to people. But when there was some interpersonal issues. There's when you deal with a lot of people, you have connections that are sometimes made and broken. And I've had a lot of intense interpersonal experiences here. And that really is what the foundation and the core of these sort of social groups on VR are actually about. These people, in my case, I target the working professionals, right?
Mm.
But the reality is they're all working professionals. They're all busy. They don't want to be dealing with certain things. They want to be going after work. They want to be having some sort of fun. They're probably at some level a little socially isolated because honestly nowadays we all kind of are. But this is a place that we can approach people on our terms in far more levels than we can in real life. So when you can make these connections with these people in the place that they feel secure, that's when actual cooperation begins to happen. I can go to a conference and I can go shake hands with people who have similar backgrounds and experiences that I do, but we're not actually going to be developing any real connection because we're trying to think about how these people fit into our own problems, our own lives. But the thing is, that's not how people work. You don't really commodify people and you can't turn them into some sort of product for your own self. You grow alongside people. You have shared experiences, learn and you teach. You give and you take. And through that, that's where some actual cooperative thought processes begin to happen. You can have some real mutual support to one another. So on the surface level, we have lectures, right? But that's just to bring people in, to get people to know each other, to give somebody a platform to talk about their sort of life or details more in depth. But really, what we're trying to do is support each other, give each other career advice, help each other with resumes, let's say. If we know about job openings in our company, we try to point it towards one another. There have been a couple of cases where people are effectively hired because they know somebody through this.
Oh wow.
One of one of the people that got me inspired about this was somebody who was doing contract work for the government, right? Somebody who was like about my age, fairly successful, pretty ahead in life. And of course, I'm like, how in the hey do you get into contract work like that? And he was just like, I played some online video games a while ago when I was a kid, and a bunch of my friends there were furries, and I just kept hanging out with them. And, one thing led to another. We became adults, and then one of them was doing contract work for the government and brought me along. I'm like, wow, okay. So effectively, this person had their career established from just hanging out with friends on the internet, right? If they can do it, why can't I? Why can't somebody else?
Wow. That's that's pretty wild, to be honest, hearing that people like play video games or even VR chat and get hired in something like governmental work through it, to be honest.
Yeah, right.
Hmm.
A lot of people just there's a lot of talented people, but especially in this modern urban age that we live in, it's really easy to get kind of isolated. And VR, at least at the moment, is in a space where it's really accessible once you, of course, get over the what is it, $2,000 equipment cost, right?
Mm.
Between computer and hardware.
Yeah,
But
it's
the I just came back from CES. They were talking a lot about AI and a lot about, I'm going to be honest, it was mostly about AI. But when looking in the VR space, there was a lot of questions about how to commercialize, how to do this, how to get, certain numbers out of it. And for me, I've been working and living in VR for 4 years now, and it's to me kind of obvious that the main strength of it is really that it enables people to see each other in the way that they want to be seen. And that's a very powerful thing.
mm.
We don't always get to present ourselves in the best light. We don't always get to choose our circumstance. We don't always get to choose who we are as people. Honestly, a lot of our lives are indeed chosen for us, but at least here we can have a little bit more. And some of the experiences that I've had were already pretty significant. And it made me a firm believer of this in this space.
Okay.
So, a little disappointing to say on the business side, they seem to have kind of missed the point. Or I don't know. I guess you can't make money off of friends, right? At
Yeah.
least somebody else's friends.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I have a whole lot of questions from that, and I don't know where to start. So I will start with the earliest question and move forward. You said earlier, it sounded like the professionals you know in real life outside of VRChat interact differently with one another than they would in VRChat. How different is that contrast between the two worlds, but with the same group of people?
The closest analogy is like trying to meet somebody at a bar.
Mm.
When apparently the place to be in the 1850s was the bar outside of Oxford, right?
Mm.
Nowadays, we have the internet, and a lot of the people who are actually developing things and doing things, they connect to their preferred community online. VR
Mm.
chat and VR spaces in particular are really powerful for the socialization aspect of what the internet gives. It's in my opinion a little bit better than even video calls. It gives a really nice personal touch into the body language. You really get a feel for the person.
Mm.
So, how do people behave differently here? There's not quite a comparison because it's more than before.
Mm.
And what do I mean by that? It's it can't really be compared to a bar group. It can't really be compared to. It really is. It's comparing to like a friend group that you have all the time. You can come and
Mm.
go as it's convenient to you. And of course they may too, but there's always those people available. And that's really powerful because frankly, nope, a lot of people lost that in childhood.
Mm.
That's the last time they had that. As an adult, you're very used to the fluidity of people in your lives, and also the sheer fact you have to put so much work into everything. Here
Mm.
you can just come in, say hi, go, leave. Somebody's probably always on, depending, of course, how social you are, but there's probably somebody you know who you can come and talk to. And how do people interact differently? Well, my group is called DegenTech for a reason.
Mm.
It's also a signifier of a lack of purity
Mm.
because overall professionalism, there's a sterile nature to it. There's an asexuality to it.
Mm.
But here, that's not what's happening because if you also talk to any, what's the stereotype of business people? They're going to have drinks and cocaine at a strip club. Even though
Mm.
the business is very formal and sterile and following very strict social norms, they're human beings don't really develop along those lines.
Mm.
And I think that's a little bit too expressed extremes because there's a much more gradual middle that can happily exist, right?
Mm. Okay.
Um, so here, people they get to know each other a little bit more closely than you may expect.
Mm.
They may end up having more intense relationships, friendships, and experiences than you would expect from something that on the surface level is a video game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely seen VRChat has that way with pulling the best and the worst out of people, but usually the best depending on how you approach it. It's a unique place I've experienced.
It's enabling.
Hmm. Oh.
There's a lot of positives and negatives to the human spirit and the human condition. Ultimately, I like to pretend I'm an optimist. So the proof of that people are capable of what they're doing, and that we have the society and civilization we do, I think is proof in itself that even though we have our flaws and our evils, we're generally speaking more good than evil.
Mhm.
And maybe it's through our convoluted inner reliance schemes that we have as people that the real good comes out, and sometimes it's because of our toxicity as individuals those systems exist. But
Hmm.
uh, this place is a little magical.
It is.
Somehow things work and flow a little differently while being very much the same.
Hmm. And the next thing I'm going to ask before I lead off into a different conversation, you said you were at CES. What did, and when they talked about VR, what kinds of things do they talk about in terms of like VR, and what was your experiences with that and versus what you've experienced here?
So for those who don't know, CES is Consumer Electronics Show, which is in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's one of the largest conventions on Earth, and it's based on consumer electronics, of course. So I was there with a few friends from VR, so we had a bit of a bias towards trying to find out what's the latest and greatest of VR.
Mm.
One, everything was AI. If you want investment advice right now, just everything is AI. I don't know what else to say. But with VR technology, there were some advancements. We got, like, for example, some interest in some finger splay gloves. There were some new headsets. There were, of course, some like competitive, like trying to have some competitive redesigns of the headset or some subcomponents for the thing. I saw somebody. Oh, a lot of augmented reality stuff. So the
Mm.
idea is to wear lightweight form factor glasses and try to have overlays. There were some people with the software. It's a very large convention. There was a lot. Frankly, though, personally, one of the disappointments was that it seems like the business for VR in particular is flatlining, partially which due to hardware issues, which can sometimes limit the user experience. So that's why they're trying to go with lower and smaller form factor equipment. I'm gonna have to turn off this controller if this is doesn't abate. But so there's a lot of question in the commercial space. How much can you actually commercialize the VR space? Zuckerberg with Meta basically spectacularly failed, and that was a multi-billion-dollar failure. And then now there's an implosion in the development sectors where AI is trying to take over everything. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these companies are just waiting for these tools to be baked a little bit more to then try to redevelop these engines, but from a different tool set. In this case, very 90% plus likely being just AI tools, right, with developer
Mm.
teams based around that. We might start seeing some things like that, but this is all conjecture. Um, we're not. There's also the issue of the contracting economy may cause less people to be able to purchase VR equipment because this is, frankly speaking, a bit of a luxury.
Mm.
So, continued contraction in the business, in the potential profit of the development of VR spaces and equipment is very limiting
Mm.
because if they can't expect to make money, they're not going to do anything. Everything in our society is to be made make money. But this space, though, for the people who are actually in the VR space, kind of prove that that's not always true. A lot of the development in this space is done for free, and there are economies that take off within itself. Gumroad, or I guess, is it still Gumroad? Whatever. Gumroad is currently the lead supplier of VRChat assets, and it does generate a lot of money. People do spend a lot of money here on these. They do spend a lot of their physical lives and a lot of their emotional effort in this space, and that is worth something. There's a lot of festivals and concerts, and I do think that's where a lot of this space is going to start going. Unfortunately, they're going to commercialize this space more aggressively and heavily. It's inevitable, but for now, we still have the space where it's free and accessible. and I'm trying to cherish that while I can.
Mm. Well, to some degree, I have a feeling that it's almost inevitable if we want this to stay alive long term, as sad as that is.
Yeah,
Hmm.
all things all things need some basis for its survival. So
Hmm.
servers aren't free.
No. Now, on to the question for you as well. DegenTech, what have been some of your favorite moments or events you've seen or done through DegenTech or alongside it, or in VRChat for that matter?
Uh, my favorite moments are that people actually started doing businesses from the connections they're in.
Oh, wow.
There's the the fact that I have some really high level researchers and we had a CTO for a medical imaging company give us the lowdown on the foundations of the technology that they were trying to develop. They didn't give any like specific details on the company, but this was a really good insight on PARS microscopy, photoacoustic resonant spectroscopy.
Oh,
So
uh, would you
it's
mind
just kind of
explaining?
amazing how much effort. Oh, yeah.
Would you mind explaining what that is? It just went right over my head. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. So that's actually a photoacoustic acoustic resonance is a really old phenomenon that's been documented. Basically, if you have a large piece of metal and you hit it with photons, it actually generates a little bit of sound, just a tiny bit. It's the idea is that there's localized heating causing the metal to expand, which causes a little bit of like a shock wave or something that can produce something that's detectable. So they use this in medical imaging by basically having. This is where my experience starts to get a little insufficient. But they try to have background audio, or I might be having this inverted. But then they're trying to have photo excitation of the tissue, and then there's an interaction that they can actually measure and record, and then give imaging.
Oh, wow.
This should be a good advancement in medical imaging, but this is a very I barely understand this stuff myself.
Well, thank you for giving a little bit
Yeah,
insight of what that is. I appreciate it.
yeah. Uh, what I do understand mainly is stabbing and cannabis. So
Ah,
those are my personal expertise.
stabbing and cannabis. What do you mean?
So my personal life it boils down to my professional life where I live as a chemist, and a lot of it's in professional testing in cannabis for sale in commercial markets. The other side of it is I did a lot of competitive sword fighting in different forms, so I just stab people now for fun.
Oh, that's actually pretty cool. Weed by day or cannabis by day, stabbing by night. That sounds pretty dope, to be honest.
Yeah, it's definitely a great tagline.
Oh, so how did you get involved with all that? What got you started down that road as a chemist?
Um, the chemistry itself was that was like a career that, of course, as a teenager, I had to make some decisions to try to get into. My dad was an engineer and scared me off from engineering. My mom was a doctor and scared me off from being a doctor. So being a scientist seemed to be a good middle of the road thing. I was the only one in my school to pass the AP chemistry exam because my school didn't have an AP chemistry class. It was a pretty Christian sort of high school.
Hmm.
So the, that kind of nudged me towards this direction. And after a little bit of soul searching, I guess I just tried the biochem route, which was kind of almost a mistake because that was turned out to be one of the most difficult degrees I can choose. But I suppose pressure can make diamonds sometimes, and I seem to have done all right.
Hmm.
Uh, the I started in environmental chemistry, wasn't very good though, and they had a job opening in a cannabis lab, which I then worked at for about 4 years. And currently, I work at an instrument supply company where they provide the equipment to those labs, and I'm their technical reference for testing on gas chromatograph systems.
Oh. So I have a couple of questions. First of which, if the degree you chose was one of the hardest ones to go down, what motivated you to keep on going?
Fear of failure. um, it's hard to say because sometimes you just have to make a decision and go with it. I never really I I have always done my best to not let difficulty dissuade me. You of course have to make the wise judgment call if something is clearly beyond your capabilities, but you generally speaking, if just because it's difficult doesn't mean it's something. It almost always it sometimes means that it is something worth doing because it is difficult. In this case, the difficulty was extraordinarily educational.
Hmm.
College education in the United States is extraordinarily expensive, and at least my degree I felt like was a reasonable use of that money. Still a little overpriced for what it is, but the education was pretty solid, and I'm endlessly thankful for it.
Hmm. So,
I do believe that
oh,
education is its own reward.
oh,
It's not just for professional ends. Understanding the world is its own has its own benefits. Good for the soul, you know.
okay. So, what was the moment for you that made you feel like this route was the one you wanted to go down? Is there any specific aha moment for you at all?
Uh, I um I think I took mushrooms. I was looking at some bushes, and bushes have a pretty fun phenomenon, at least from my perspective, where they all look the same, but they're all different, right?
Hmm.
No two bushes actually the same if you think about it, but they all look pretty much the same. And on the on the mind of hallucinogens, that was a pretty motivating kind of revelation, let's say.
Hmm. So, how did that moment staring at a bush with that revelation give you that aha moment of this is my road chemistry?
Because biology is fascinating. Because how does it actually do that? There's the whole process of evolution that from theoretical basic origins of life comes from an extraordinarily diverse set of organisms that occupy a whole vast range of physical states and wherever really there's water and iron seems to be allows for life to occur. So you gotta, and again, you gotta kind of like have an eye for where the world is going. At
Hmm.
the time, rewind, I was making these decisions in around like 2010 to let's say 2012. When I had to make these firm decisions for myself. So what was happening at the time? There was the end of the 2008 financial crash. There was a general downturn in American society. There was the Arab Spring was kind of popping up for a few years prior to that. And I just remember having a general haze of commercial media that just seemed to get kind of banal and vanilla. So it felt like the old world was kind of getting to its point where it really would stop producing as much as it once did. And from my perspective, this was all to do with like computers. You know, everything with a big fascination was with semiconductors, programming, make computers. Everybody was telling me since I was young, become a programmer, etc. So but you gotta think really long term because at the time I was like 19, 18. You can't think about what's happening now. And I had this whole, it seemed like biotechnology was really catching on. There was the Human Genome Project was either completed or well underway. There were the Large Hadron Colliders that were being built. I was always fascinated by genetic research. You know, like Dolly the sheep, the fact that genetic modified organisms even exist at all. So it seemed like those technologies were on the cusp of becoming commercially significant, while the other fields were becoming saturated. And, some of these things are a very practical economic sort of decision, like an 18-year-old.
Hmm. So through your careers, what has been some things that have taught you the most about the world? As you said earlier, learning about the world is important.
I mean, my career, unfortunately, maybe wasn't the most inspiring to optimism. I am a
Mm.
quality control sort of person. I do
Mm.
analytical parts of chemistry. I test things to make sure that they are within limits, right? And I generally have access to a mass spectrometer that can identify unknowns. So you end up developing a bit of an investigative mindset, very inquiring, inquisitive, slightly paranoid about cleanliness, admittedly, but uh, it's all for good results, And what I learned about the world, unfortunately, is that there's a bit of a durability that's needed to survive in the world. There are a myriad of dangerous situations. There are a myriad of dangers, acute and chronic, that you're exposed to pretty much constantly, and things can happen. So it helps to be positive. It helps to just take every day one at a time. Find the time you have in order to enjoy the people in your life and to enjoy the times that you do have. To enjoy, like, oftentimes, especially, I'm only 32, so don't mind me acting too old,
It's
but
okay.
it's
I'm about the same age
easy
as you.
for the
I'm
young to
33.
forget. um, it's easy to forget, like, the joy of having a good body, a good mind, to wake up peacefully in the morning, to not have pain, um, to not have a clear head, to have a quiet home, and there's the act of life in itself is both a struggle and a beauty,
Mm.
but it's still a struggle sometimes.
It can be. So through your experience here and with VRChat, how has DegenTech and VRChat enabled you as a person?
Uh, it's given me something to keep me sane. Honestly, I have a traveling job. I have my own means of social isolation. So,
Mm.
um, I generally love VR chat, but I have some criticisms of relying on it a little too much.
Mm.
But because of my life where I'm constantly moving around a lot, it really gave a lot of stability to my life too. So Degen Tech was a way for me to stay focused while in VR, because I've been through my own phases which have led to, like, heartbreak and alcoholism, or just trying to get lost in the sauce, as they say. But it's ultimately a pretty shallow and self-destructive experience to do it that way.
Mm.
I've seen some very positive uses of VR. I think, like, the people who learn how to develop themselves socially, learn to interact with people, learn languages, develop communities. Those are some of the best uses of VR I've seen. To create good experiences with our fellow people, our fellow animals.
You know, I still have always seen VR, or VR chat anyway, as a social platform, kind of as a platform. You get out of it what you look for in it. And you can come in here and find yourself entertainment, one would say, as a polite way to put it, or you can find stability or a purpose, depending on what you seek. In VR chat, like every other platform out there, either Halo or Facebook is no different, at least in my perspective.
Yeah.
Mm.
Gotta organize your time as a person. You gotta know, like, what
Mm.
you want, what you want to do. You have to strive for what you want to do. The Lacanian idea of the pursuit of happiness, right?
Mm.
You're here on this earth. You weren't asked to be on this earth, but you're here, and might as well pursue those things that make you as a person.
Indeed. So,
Which, yeah,
ooh.
which on VR is a great way to meet people and to find people who have similar perspectives.
Mm.
Sorry.
Oh, no, my bad. Um, so if you're working professional, doing all traveling and doing all these things, how do you manage time and a group at the same time with VRChat? It sounds like a lot of work, to be honest.
Very poorly. That's how I manage it. To be honest, there was a few times that I thought that DegenTech would fall to the wayside. I had to drop the projects for months on end, like a couple of times now. But one, it seems like the core idea seems to resonate with people. I'm the person who made it, and I'm still surprised by how much commitment and consistency people give. One important detail is that it's very important for people to. I'm a firm believer in these communities that in order for it to be a self-sufficient community, there has to be many hands involved in the actual running of the community, which at first is a very hard bargain to sell to people. But now I have like a staff of 7 people. We're all working professionals. We're doing this really in the last bits of our free time. But somehow between 7 of us, we do have the few hours between us to keep an eye on the group and make sure the whole thing is actually going. So those people are definitely a major reason why this is still going. But the community itself, the consistent encouragement that they've given is not to be understated either. I sometimes am afraid they feel like I'm being a little quiche, a little like I don't know, showy salesman-y by trying to give some statement about how like the community giving their time and their attention and really means a lot. But these are important people. I tried to do the fuzzy math one time of trying to be like, okay, what are these guys' like approximate hours, like $1 per hour compensation? So, and I'm also doing it like I'm trying to underestimate it like on a 24-hour clock instead of an 8-hour clock. So, like, I'm giving a lot of extensive alterations like that to lower the cost, and it's still like this dramatically high number. And these people are coming to our meetups and are giving their time on the discussion groups. They're giving their expertise when it's actually relevant. And, they're frankly not getting anything for it. Nobody's getting anything for it, but they're still doing it because we're still people. We still just like this. And I'm going to be honest, it's a big community. I'm not pretending everybody's friends here, but these people have more similar perspectives in life than mayhaps elsewhere. And they seem to find a lot of camaraderie through that. A lot of people really seem to. I've had several people just say thanks for fostering a community that at least tries to be more serious about stuff, because the internet's escapist, and we all get it. Like, I grew up on the internet. There's a tremendous elements of escapism in my career on the internet. But there's still a life to be lived. I'm still a human in corporeal form. And this is just a tool. This is a space that I have access to in the modern day. And it's just like anything, if I have a hammer, I can use it to build something, or I can smash my own head in, right? It's how you use it. But VR is enabling. It can also enable some less desirable parts of the human condition.
So I have a question on your on Degen Tech and the community. What were some of the beginning stages of Degen Tech like, and how has it evolved over its life?
The beginning stages were very close knit. It was just me knowing people, getting people on like in a contact list that I just remembered. Like, oh, this guy was a biologist, this guy's a chemist, this guy's an engineer, this guy's a physicist. I would meet somebody being like, oh, hey, you're a chemist. Cool. Okay, I know these people. If you wanted to have a conversation, they do this, and so I basically just try to connect people initially, and a lot of it was through me. I had some people initially to help me. I remember we had Enbian and Night as the initial people, where Enbian was the admin and Night was our moderator. But people got busy, so there was a couple of stages where things dropped. I told you about the story about where one moment I noticed that we had about like 7 or 8 people in one VR chat room at a time. That was the moment where I wanted to officiate that's when I made the Discord. So that's when I had Enby and a Night be the admin and moderator, respectively. And for that, it kind of like was that for about a year, I would say, a little longer because it was about 6 months and then a year. But more recently, I had a couple of key people come on. Our moderator staff grew to 7 people, and we had Apotech come on as admin.
Mm.
And honestly, that's its own story. But the Apotech coming on gave a lot of respectability in one ways. He is, I believe that you guys did an interview with him a little.
Oh. Oh. Maybe me. I hope it's not me. It's going to be a long walk back. I'm going to turn this off and back on again. Enjoy the advertisement. Oh, the last time I saw you here, Novid, was October.
Yeah, absolutely. That ghost ship was definitely something, to say the least. But we're here now.
Here to tell you something amazing. Right now, PJKT application is open until May 12th. So if you go right down the description, which will give you to a Discord, discord.gg/PJKT, you'll have all the information you need to sign up for your community, your creators. We're open to communities, creators, and people building things, and content creators as well. Everything is right down in the Discord, right for you. What else do we have here? What is PJKT, Novid?
Well, PJKT is a virtual convention here in VRChat that holds many different types of events within Project Fest, from film showcases with Project Lens, from developer talks with Project Inc., as well as many live performances and many different events held by the community through our events applications forums as well. It'll also be down in that Discord, discord.gg/PJKT. So, of course, make sure to go check it out.
Most definitely. And PJKT this year is going to be June 27th through July 7th. So mark it down in your calendars. We'd love to see you there. See you this summer, folks. Hello, welcome back. So I believe the last thing you were saying is that Apotech brought something to the group when it came on. As a bit of a story behind it. May I ask what that is?
Oh, the story. Oh boy, the story. Well, Apotech approximately about a year ago stepped on as admin for the group. They brought in a lot of what I call clout for the group because they are a very accomplished mechanical engineer and business person in their own sense. A fairly interesting of a person, especially if you're a techie kind of person yourself. The story is a little bit long and nuanced, but and I'm not really sure if it's truly wise to name names and do that whole process, you know, air the dirty laundry of the histories of people, right? But what I can say is that forging human connection on VR is it's like forging connections with people in any other space. People are people. We care about people deeply, but we also fear people deeply. We want to impress our friends. We want to impress the people that we look up to in this life, and we fear rejection. We fear the consequences, and we fear sometimes our friends and our loved ones. So in VR, it has its own ebbs and flows in the way that.
You're back.
That have been disvalued. No. The VR has is of tremendous value to these people. It gives them some incredibly important experience. So the story is basically of one where Apotech's and I's story kind of our story don't really have much in common. But occasionally, two people's stories come to cross. We had some mutual contacts from our past that not really sure the overall causes, but they didn't really seem to. Well, they ended up not really appreciating Apotech for him. Really appreciate Apotech as a person. And I had my own conflating involvement in that, where I wasn't really part of it. They started giving a lot of their time and efforts into Degen Tech. They found value in the evidently from how much support they've given for it. But I think it's they find yeah, look at Pornall, that is absolutely a place you can get. But it's also a place to meet people, and if you use it that way, you can also gain it that way.
Hmm. So
I do apologize for being so vague on that story. It's just a lot of drama. It's a lot of people, a lot of names. Some of the stories are still in process, you know?
it's a-okay. If you don't want to share full details, I very much will respect that and won't pry. What about the group changed when you started bringing Apotech and people like him and the other staff in, may I ask, from where it started?
Um, in some ways, honestly, it didn't change that much in itself, but you know, these things prime the group for future stages of growth. What really I think that gave was to have a second active admin that really took ownership of the group. There's an element of personal identification with something to to take on the responsibility of its success or failure, right?
Hmm.
And it's really hard to do that when it's VR. This is just we just hang out, right? So there's what's really tying anybody to this? For me, it's because I started it, and it's been something that I've been working on for quite a while now. For Apotech, it was I guess he just found a way to, like I said, find value in this. I came to believe that he was speaking truthful and also with pretty deliberate intent. I had and I he managed to gain my trust. Uh, and there's also a bit of a, let's say, a bit of a debt as well, because the problem I caused problems for Apotech. It wasn't my intention. It wasn't really something that I had control over either. But sometimes you end up you know, this is sometimes how friends go from friends to close friends. It's just you don't really have a reason to be around somebody until you have a reason to be around them. And then when you do, you might actually find that your goals and hopes in life actually align a lot more than you realize.
Hmm.
So he's been helping out now for about a year, and it's been pretty good, because what in terms of what other people would see, that didn't change the group too much in itself, but it primed it for the next stage of growth, which was the Virality meetup, where we managed to recruit a lot of our science and engineering in from Virality, and overall we gave the impression that was good enough that retained a lot of those new users. And to me, that was the sign that this was starting to take on a momentum by itself. Because it's really difficult to run this when it's just kind of, I always use the term friends of BTEX, you know? Because if I have a bad day, if I have a bad month, I'm not going to be there for those people to do it. There's also this momentum that socialization has, that if you're not there for a while, people forget you exist, which is just natural. But once that all started happening, it started having its own self-sustaining momentum, and now it seems like people are actually willing to help out and get involved. So it's no longer all on my shoulders, and that's a tremendous difference. I think it also makes a good impression on the community, because it's not as dictatorial. When it's my group, anything I say goes, but now it's more of a community decision. I admit sometimes I act like a despot. It's but it's hard to really defend that one. But I am trying to make this something that's led by the community. And in fact, one of my top goals for this group is to actually step away as the admin. I
Oh,
feel
wow.
that other people would be able to take on the task better than I, and I facilitated the creation of it, but for it to actually be a self-sustaining thing, it needs to be ran by somebody who explicitly isn't me. I can still be around, but somebody else should be taking the helm. Uh, People have been encouraging, very encouraging for me to keep going on this, because sometimes I do really wonder what the value of it is, but we ended up developing a very intriguing community. And I think there's already been a lot of value made here, and we're just seeing the beginning of it.
Mm.
We just met up in CES, a few of us. They oh man, these absolute turbo dorks. They managed to get a conversation with that one physical memes fan. They got they get invited to the backstage room to discuss whether it's good for their business needs and their fabrication devices. These people are wild, trying to talk to the technical developers of these AI systems in order to develop better medications. I told you about the medical equipment earlier. There's nuclear engineers, there's doctors, psychologists. There's a whole bunch of interesting folk on VR. And once you actually start looking for it, you find it everywhere.
You do. So one thing I think I may share for you as well is if you said you want to make it about the community, but the people in your community are encouraging you to continue, I think they've kind of made their voice known in that sense for that regard.
Yeah, I I have like a certain, let's say, presence in VR that people seem to enjoy. Part of it, though, at least when it came to Degen Tech, was that I did have a little bit of education and community development. Are you ready for the hard left turn here?
Sure, let's go.
Yeah. LARPing, right? So beat 'em up boffer sticks. You play dress up in the park. You have a little foam stick. Well, there's this whole thing about chivalry and lineages in the LARP world. I play a game called Belagarth, which in the past was known as in the past I played Daggercure, technically separate games, but now it's all Belagarth. There is a community and a culture of knights in that game. And knighthood in that game has a bit of a different emphasis than I guess some people would expect. My game is a sport LARP, so it's definitely emphasizing the martial prowess and the ability. A lot of these people come from martial arts kind of backgrounds and such, but there is the martial aspect of being a knight, but there's the other aspect of that you need to be a pillar of your. You need to be an upstanding person. You need to be able to stand up for yourself, stand up for others, speak the truth, serve the community, defend the defenseless. You can't do those things if you can't stand up to yourself. You can't do those things if you can't stand up to an aggressor. You can't do those things if you can't, discipline yourself and actually live a life that gives you some durability, some strength. So I was lucky enough to have some of those experiences to kind of prime me emotionally and with some social abilities of how to actually run these groups. As well, I also had a very interesting friend in college who ended up being the student body president, who gave some very useful lessons in how people work and how to, but still to be, it's very difficult trying to organize things and run things because it also puts you in a very public position. But that doesn't mean you have to, for whatever reason, compromise as a person. That's where the bravery and strength comes in, because it's very easy to run a social group in the way that you think people want you to run it and basically try to become a different person. You need to know what you are to other people, but what you are to yourself too. And I think when you know those two things, you can bridge the gap and actually make something that is appropriate to yourself and others. Something that's healthy, basically, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of experiences in my life that are escapist. I mean, I come from Las Vegas, which is one of the, a city of escapism and tourism and sin and vice. And trying to find the ecstasies of life within the shadows and depression of it all. So, but those things can can consume you. And when you start building your environment around those things, then that environment contains you into that sort of behavior, into that sort of thought processes, that sort of life. So you have to you just have to have a respect and understanding of what life is and what yourself is, and that's what I think can, at least from my own perspective, I think that's what allowed me to survive and be at least a little bit successful in what I've been doing.
Mm. Well, I think it shows. That's just my two cents worth, but it shows.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I do have one little question since you've done LARPing and stuff. When you got into LARPing, what brought you to it, and did you expect that sense of knighthood as you described earlier?
I did fencing when I was younger. From the age of 11, I started doing Olympic fencing, which is the stuff you saw on TV, you know. I picked it up when I was 16 as like a pre-college thing, and it was really good for me. I really enjoyed it. It was something that was a good community. There were it was like one of the first time I had a really solid group of friends that really seemed to actually like back me up, and it was really cool because it was a game. So when I say back you up, I mean that like kind of literally. They would teach you to charge at a shield wall, so they would back you up. They would literally be pushing you, but they would cheer you on, and this is a way to like develop yourself as a person, expose yourself to some really like dangerous and scary situations, but in a way that's really exhilarating and reasonably safe, I guess. I didn't go to the hospital. So,
What do you mean you didn't go to the hospital? Sounds like you did.
Me myself didn't go to the hospital. Not for this sort of stuff, but yeah, occasionally people's knees bend the wrong way, you know?
Oh, just the occasional hyperextension, it's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I hope this isn't too much of a departure in like the personal, but honestly, a bit of the reason I think I got so involved in this stuff was because I had a bit of a violent childhood, so but it's sometimes these sort of things get complicated because like sometimes how you define particularly aggressive playtime versus like actual violence, and sometimes the line blurs. So coming from that background, I seem to have developed a fascination with any sort of combat sport. Unfortunately, I have an eye condition, which I learned somewhat recently was very likely due to that violent background. Where it made some traditional martial arts not appealing. Basically, if I get hit in the eye, I might go blind a little too early. So with sword fighting, I can wear masks and goggles, which is a huge difference for me. So at least in my mind, I'm like a dorky martial artist. I'm like technically a martial artist, but like not one that anybody actually respects. But I have a lot of fun, and it develops me as a person, and it's taught me a lot. And I don't need respect. Not everything in my life I need to do for respect, right? I also like it's easy for me to say because like I get respect for my career, so like nobody really cares I LARP anymore. Oh man, if only they knew what I did online.
I hope you didn't feel like it was a personal attack. I hope you didn't take it that way when I said the hyperextension thing.
Oh, personal attack?
No, it wasn't.
I can make it a personal attack, but I'll have to see you in person.
Fair point. Oh, so the sense of knighthood then that you described about the whole being a pillar of the community, I take it that kind of atmosphere is what led to you learning from LARPing, as you said.
There's a lot of things that you can learn from any life that anyone lives. Everyone has their own set of unique experiences. And at the time, I had the experience of serving under the tutelage of the late and great King Cert, right? So I was 16 years old. I was I was being roughed up a little bit in home. So I wanted to have some friends. I wanted to have a place that also kind of taught me how to do things because I was a little bit of a nerdy guy, right? There was a group of people that I was suggested to join from this other community I was a part of, which was this online forum. And because I did fencing, they suggested me to go there. And I meet a lot of other people suddenly in my age. I'm not competing to get into college. I'm not competing to, in the LARP world, I'm not competing to win a tournament. I'm not competing to be the best student. I am having a fun time with my friends. And the only thing that they're trying to teach me is because it's things I should know. If I want to be good at this game, I should know how to, for example, push somebody with my shield, how to kick somebody, how to wrestle, how to, be quick, be strong, be nimble, how to look around me, how to assess a field really quickly. And at this time, a lot of this was centered around this one person named Sir. This person was an aspiring actor. At the time, was about 21 years old, if I remember, and they were really rising in life. They had a lot of things going for them, and this realm was kind of coalescing around this really magnetic character. And everything seemed to be going in with great momentum. Like everything was going great. This was like before I was in college, so I still had this spark of life that everything could still go my way. We were a bunch of like dorky kids. I can't express how dorky we were. Seriously, we weren't exactly the most athletic, brightest, just not the prettiest or anything. But we actually had some legitimate training. We're talking like we had an army drill sergeant teach us on how to march and how to use it. And ironically, in LARP, this stuff actually becomes really useful. And suddenly, lo and behold, these ragtag group of dorks were beating some of the better LARP groups in other realms when we went traveling, because we had some coordinated training. And this really happened spontaneously. And as I grow older, it's almost more the miracle, it seems. But all things come to an end because one morning the King Cert was found dead. He was strangled and beaten on the side of the road on his morning run.
I'm sorry. For
Case was never, yeah.
Oh.
The case was never solved. Before that, shortly before that, I was put under the tutelage of Sir Nub, of really Squire Nubs, which technically make a page, but it was a formation induction into the Royal Army, and they gave. I didn't realize that at the time, but they had me take the oath because I didn't really understand honestly what was going on. But it's a pretty generic oath, but it's the defend the defenseless, serve the community, and speak the truth, even if it leads to your death. Which it's kind of quiche, really, honestly, but that's something that I did right before college, and then I left. I left in the shadow of Sert's death, in the shadow of this bright light of having these friends and wonderful experiences and developing as a person, at least for a short time in a way that actually seemed good for what was a 16-year-old boy at the time. And I just left all of that. We went off to beautiful sunny Santa Barbara and became a biochemist. And that's something that I returned to when I was like 25, 26, to actually start thinking about it more seriously, because really, like, there's always a question we always ask ourselves: what are we actually doing? None of us asked to be born here, but what are we actually trying to do now that we are here? What do the people in our lives mean to us, and what do we mean to those people? And what are we willing to do for them? What are we willing to do for ourselves? And some of these things do take action and bravery and take great feats of strength and courage at times to actually sometimes have the simplest of peace. We all don't get to choose our lives, but we get to choose our actions in life. And that's really, I guess, the difference of what we do versus what we probably would have done is really the best way we can define ourselves as who we are actually as people. What is it that our spirits do for us versus just our animal selves?
Hmm. So you said you've returned to a 25 mask. What are you trying to do? And what was it like returning to it at 25?
I mean, 25-year-old going back into LARPing. How do you think I felt about it? I it's I was already a few years into the world, and I was just trying to find a place for myself in a very real way. But I mean, what anybody would answer to that question, have a good life. But what does a good life mean to everybody? It's different things to different people. For myself, I seem to enjoy mastery. I actually do seem to enjoy people in a way, but I can get burned out on people too, so I have to be a little careful about that. I very much enjoy pushing myself to limits, but I'm also a bit lazy. Look at me, I'm a bit of a cat. There's definitely a bit of a bipolar kind of certain kind of elements to myself and my personality. So I tend to attract things that also seem to have a type of intensity to it. Um, which, as an adult, you start also making a lot of realistic decisions of like, what can I afford? What can I do? What do I have time for? What do I actually want to do versus like, what do I actually have available to me? Everybody wants to travel. Everybody wants to be beautiful. Everybody wants to be smart. Everybody wants to be the greatest martial artist. Everybody wants to be the strongest person on earth. Everybody wants to have this and that and everything. But what are you actually like? What's your story though? Because you're not going to do all of that. And some of the experiences you have are completely unique to you and to no one else. Like how can I do feel like a dork for being doing these sort of things for so long, but how can you really explain the quiet like miracle and giddiness you think of the stories of like the time you were mostly drunk rummaging through a bush and then you come across a cult meeting, right? And in the woods chanting, um trying to find salvation for the sins of the crowd. Then later you start seeing that sort of cultic magic everywhere. You find people, fall in love, still see those same things. You start seeing the threads of people, of emotions, of events, of reality, just are kind of weaving together. So you just learn to start enjoying it. Because really you can have a lot of fascinations and a lot of anxieties about what you're doing and what you should be doing. You should be richer, you should be handsomer, you should be smarter, you should be stronger. But, you're alive and that's what you have. That's what you are. That's what was given to you and you didn't ask for it and that's what you are and you're just doing it. And it's an experience that's all your own and it's something that is all your own, not something for anyone else to see or to really even judge. Of course, you'll have people in your life and you'll have people that see your life, but it's really your own experience with yourself that's really the most important. And getting lost in the sauce, you know? I guess that's what I'm trying to get in it. Because, boy, at these LARP events, they're a lot of fun, let me tell you. Boy, everybody, you should try it once in your life.
Oh, so what are some of your favorite moments in LARPing? What's a story that you've experienced that stuck with you?
Those moments are so many, short and long, and some stretch on for years, some were for even half a second. I remember, like off the top of my head, I one time was doing King of the Hill with this one person, this one big guy named Wolf, and we held on to the both of us onto the center of the field for 10 seconds, 10 seconds against like 8, 10 people, and we were able to win because we went back to back and we just started spinning. And somehow we both had a shield and a sword, and we're spinning, 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 and nobody could get to us. Ever since that day, you got to spin to win, brother. The cult meeting was quite the fascinating one, and that definitely ended up coloring me as a person quite thoroughly. Um, it's kind of amazing what happens when you start seeing symbolism of your own life in the world as you go around.
Mhm.
It really does sometimes make magic seem like it's real, if you choose it to be.
Mm.
I
Would
really enjoyed my memories of being in a shield line with my friends, knowing that we're all stressed out, but we're all like we're making it work together. Those many nights of being in a tent, just smoking some cannabis with friends. It's a great community, and I like the lifestyle. I like the lifestyle a lot.
mm, okay. And you kind of mentioned a few times a cult. Would you mind elaborating a bit what you mean by stumbling into a cult?
The death cult. It's something that's a bit of a meme within itself, but magic is real if you make it real, right? So a cult is
Mm.
real if you choose to make it real. What it actually was a bit of a role play ceremony. Somebody, I think, had a death that they were trying to process. And sometimes the best thing to do with grief is to go into art. And this person's version of art apparently had some pseudo-religious iconography and ceremonies. So it was a cult meeting at midnight, the death cult, where they had um, a mock sacrifice of a human sacrifice. But first, they had people whisper their sins into the jar to be then consumed by the sacrificial lamb. That sort of thing. So there was a bit of elements of neo-paganism, probably Satanism, but also Catholicism. And I have a bit of religious study to be pretty certain in that statement. But the symbolism is, death is a journey. We all are born because we're born and we're going to die, and because we die, we live. We have our lives, and as life changes us, death will also change us. In each
Mm.
experience of loss, experience of death, we go through a transformation. So, the symbol of that is a pretty basic one. It's just the X, the black X. But it's something that I've taken on as a part of my own person. The X over the heart, which is I haven't officiated my Sona yet, but it's going to be a detail for it that I do hope to. It'll be something that I'll probably keep carrying on. These are the details that shape us and make us as people, and something that I'll carry on for probably the rest of my life.
Mm.
Because I could just not find any meaning in the world, but that seems a little detached, a little
Mm.
numbing.
So how did that experience of walking into someone grieving through role play, how did that change you, and what did you take out of it?
Oh, the grief was real. The grief was real. It wasn't roleplay. The ceremony was roleplay
Yeah, that's
because
what I
we're
meant.
we're all a bunch of yeah. Um, because it's shared. It's something that we all inevitably go through in this life.
Mm.
Grief is common. Grief is profuse in the world. We're all born. We're all going to die. So, I've certainly had my own tragedies in my life, and currently I'm going through it right again. Um, I had my brother die in November, so um, and these are the things that we live with. These are the things that shape our lives. So to see somebody turn their grief into something that the community can take part in and find connection in is beautiful, and it's true art. This is because what do people normally do with grief? They try to numb it, they try to escape it. At least this person managed to turn their grief into something more positive. And to this day, the community is greatly endeared. It's interesting because it doesn't actually have a basis in terms of what's connecting it. Because let's take it literally any sort of cult or any sort of religion. There's a person, there's a scripture, there's something to actually tie it. To these people, it's just that it's understanding that people are in pain, and the only thing we can say is death is a journey. Travel on.
Mm.
We know we can't comfort them. We know we can't change it. show them that we're sharing an experience. We know that, well, we've been there.
Hmm.
Oh.
Well, I am sorry for your loss, by the way.
Thank you. These silly games, they they make their mark on us as people. We learn from them. We grow alongside these things. They shape us. I'm damn fast now, let me tell you.
I'm sure spending that much time into a skill you'll definitely hone your craft very much so.
Yeah, I'm pretty renowned for stabbing good.
Explains the whole beginning portion if you're known for cannabis and stabbing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. Well, I'm asking another question as well, since something that's more about you as well. What were you expecting when you were going into chemistry it to be like versus what you experienced? Hello, I'm actually here to interrupt the episode you're watching really quick to ask you a favor. Please come join us at any of the other locations we have. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify, both of which we post our episodes and are very up to date on both. We have Discord where you go to hang out all the time, where you're gaming and shooting the breeze over with many people over that way. Feel free to come join us. I invite you. If you wish to support us, we have a Patreon where we post a bunch of random bits, bobs, and extra podcasts every once in a while for you to go enjoy. Also, if you wish to support us while in VRChat, we're now part of the creator economy. So please come join if you wish to support us there. It's there for you to choose if you so wish. And thank you very much. And a special thanks to some of the people who have signed up on our Patreon, which are as follows, and I have written down so I'll remember. And that's a tough thing. Forbidden Zero, Niche, Aliquum, Future Oracle, Lesser Capybara, and Frozen. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
I didn't really know what to expect. I was a pretty lost kid. I didn't really know. I knew I didn't really know a lot, so I wanted to do something that seemed a bit more foundational. Math, physics, chemistry, biology. I chose chemistry just because it seemed to be a good middle ground. But I also had to make some realistic approximations of what I can do. I wasn't the top of my math course, the math classes, so that kind of told me I wasn't bad, but I wasn't going to be the guy solving nuclear physics, for example. So, or solving my VR hardware problems. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I can only imagine how goofy this looks.
Oh, to be quite honest
I
with
really
you,
don't know what this is.
I'll share a personal story of VR tech just working. I remember once earlier on in one of our episodes, Raptor and I had a good friend of ours, named White, and White is a dancer, and we were just kind of shooting the shit, and the topic of full body tracking came up. And then I had to make a joke at that exact moment, so I threw my legs in the air, and the exact moment they froze, and then I crashed. But the recording still caught their banter as my legs are in the air, as they're making fun of me with my legs in the air. And I'll tell you, that moment is fucking stuck as one of my funniest full body tracking moments just working.
That must have made your viewership explode. That's a happy accident right there.
Oh, yeah, totally. It stayed in there. That's exactly what happened.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, so don't worry about the full body thing just working. Not cooperating. It happens. It's a part of the goofy, wonderful aesthetic that makes this place amazing, whether it's your arm going to the moon or all of a sudden midway through a heartwarming chat your waist just decides to go to the moon.
Yeah. However, the aesthetic of me having my lag spikes from my $150 a month internet is not so cool.
Oof.
I'm glad that hasn't happened though since the one drop.
Since you didn't quite know what to expect getting into chemistry, what was your experience like once you started participating in the field?
I'm gonna be honest, it was pretty negative. I started my career doing toxicology work. The guy it was an unpaid internship. The guy kind of gave me the runaround, and later turned out the guy was like wanted by the FBI for importing fake pharmaceuticals. So that wasn't really a good start.
Oh,
Then I did environmental testing, which was for like 8260, 8270, which is petroleum diesel and soil water. But I was also doing the PCB testing, which, that job put me in the hospital like 3 months in. And I
oh,
was doing PCB testing, which is polychloroyl biphenyls, and those are carcinogenic. Those are long-term carcinogens. So those deposited in adipose tissue, fat tissue in the body. So I'm exposed to that stuff. Then I go to a cannabis lab, which was so poorly run that you would think that it was some sort of like scheme, but it wasn't actually. Like it was a legitimate business, but in the like loosest terms possible.
mm,
Uh, which now I worked for a more significant like company that's a lot more established, but I've also seen a lot of corporate tomfoolery, I shall say, and
mm.
also vulture capitalism where they come in and like buy up struggling businesses. So all the doohickey practices that go into the quality control, that goes into things like your food and your packaging and your clothing and everything you do and wear. Chemistry is everywhere, and I'm just seeing the quality control standards and practices of it. It's the world really is tied together on shoestring and duct tape.
Oh, sounds like chemistry
This is
has
a
altered your view quite a bit.
Yes, it really has, especially like academic chemistry versus commercial chemistry. The differences are astounding. And I think that chemistry is uniquely something that you end up knowing a little bit of a lot of things. So I have tiny bits of knowledge of a super diverse set of fields at this point because I do quality control in a lot of those. And I think that helps me a lot with the DegenTech group to actually like have some connecting points with a large group of people. Which have very diverse skill sets. But I seem to the people seem to like the way I speak, so I seem to hold their fascination just by having these tiny little points of connection.
Mm. Well, from our conversation so far, you've held my attention, and I find our conversation
Yay.
very enlightening.
So,
You're welcome.
there is a warning in here though that I feel at some point that I need to put in. As an analytical chemist and studying in the past studied biochemistry, we do live in a physical world, and we interact with that world through our habits, right? We eat, we live, we consume, we waste. The world is changing. We are, in a lot of ways, creating our own heavens and our own hells. There are a number of things that currently are on the horizon. Recently, there was proof of widespread contamination of PFAS, polyfluoroalkyl substance materials, and things like Teflon, which do have some negative health detriments. There have been issues with microplastics proliferation in the environment. There were many chemical spills like the East Palestine train crash. There's water contamination. Like all of the New York water has significant levels of PFAS, for example, and some of the waters from the East Palestine train spilled into the New York water basins. There's also the larger things like our food stability, climate change, and our political systems are now taking a sharp turn against academics. I live in the United States. I'm recording this on, what is this, January 28th? Yeah, so the NIH lost a lot of funding. There was a freeze in government workers, which, let me tell you, you can't halt science. It's sometimes by stopping it, you lose years of progress. You can't let those incubators go cold. You can't let those cell cultures die. You can't let some of these pieces of equipment go cold. So right now it's a little scary. I'm talking with a lot of these academics. I'm talking to a lot of these researchers and stuff, and it's the world is changing in ways that's kind of scary for people like us.
Mm.
Um, you know, we already weren't making that much money. People seem to think scientists make tons and tons of money. There's a few positions that do, but those are exceedingly rare. It's much more common to make a lot of money, like let's say as a lawyer or as a doctor, than as a scientist. And even then, sometimes it seems like they don't make as much money as they used to either. So there's a lot of fear and distrust. We generally do work that's very esoteric and people understand, even within our own profession. Like other chemists don't know what like 8260, 8270 testing is, for example. It's specializations within specializations. So, but it's sometimes it's getting very concerning. Uh, I think I've seen cases like I've been exposed to chemicals. Can't really deal with deal with let's say like going to my boss or anything because they would fire me. I'm pretty sure I saw a case of human trafficking in one of these labs, and there wasn't really like interfering with that would have had some very deep and sharp consequences. Um, I've seen people get hurt. I've seen people be upset at work. I've seen a lot of weird and gnarly stuff that I really hoped wouldn't be as common in our society as it actually is.
Mm. So with a lot of these things that scare you and professionals like you, is there anything people can do to, uh, not, I would say protect themselves, but like prepare, I guess is a way to put.
Um, I just do your best to tolerate and treat each other well. Learn to get along with people, but it also means to coordinate and cooperate with people, which is to say sometimes you also have to take a stand against the things that you see in this world. Um, of course, I'm not such so oblivious to think that you can throw away everything for specific ideals whenever it comes up. You got to be smart, but cooperation I think is really key among people, and finding a way to find empathy for one another. But there's also an element that you have to defend it. You have to know how to stand up for yourself, and you have to stand up for the people who, when you think it's important. Life takes bravery, and I'm just very afraid that sometimes cowardice early on can result in a more dangerous situation later. So small acts, as a J.R.R. Tolkien, you know, the small acts of kindness keep the darkness at bay, and he's a pretty good author. There's something to it.
Mm. You know, something I've learned in my life on that note is sometimes the smallest of gestures can indeed mean the world to people. Like, I'm going to use something a bit more specific. For example, there was a lady I met in a grocery store a long time ago, and she was having a hard time. And I can only imagine what happened after our interaction, but you could see she was in distress at the moment because she couldn't afford what was going on. She had to tell the clerk to put things back. And so she had her kids with her. They were crying. So you could see the situation in the moment was kind of intense at the moment. And without a thought, I thought I have whatever the difference is. I noticed at the time, it's like, just throw it on my bill, throw my stuff in, you take the stuff and go. And for me, wasn't a lot of money, but I would all imagine, based on what I saw of the situation, the littlest things can mean the world to somebody at that moment, like that woman I just mentioned. It's 20, $30 to me. It's nothing. But to her, it could have been the world.
Yeah. What was the story? The room with the yellow wallpaper. Of the different lessons of it, it's just people can get trapped in their own worlds of misery and completely unable to escape on their own abilities, and it happens in many parts of our society. A lot of people. That happens to a lot of people. There's always the chance that person was like doing some sort of scam, but really, I just don't care anymore. Um, there's people are people. We all need the same thing, and just some small acts can really have a dramatic effect on people and their trajectory as people. I my my brother who died recently, he was in his early years, he was somebody that would be seen as very promising. He was actually tested as a very high IQ person at a young age, but
Oh no.
was but really what negatively made everything take for a turn was that my brother found a girl, and that girl found heroin. So my brother found heroin, and that took over the next 20 years of life until he died. All of our stories do collect into the tapestry of history. History is not just the events that we see as making effect on the world. Everything that the world is history. Even that animal in the woods bleeding and dying alone is part of history. Even if there was a big part of it. All of our collective experiences are part of this. And we're all human beings, all connected. Everyone's misery is in some ways part of our responsibility. Most of us are born with empathy, feel the misery of others. I think that's very indicative that we're kind of built to have that responsibility, and in reality, that's our human strength. So sometimes those thoughtless actions of kindness are, in truth, the wisest thing you can do. Because it's, the heart, they say speak from the heart. Well, the heart is intuitive. If it's your instinct is hard-coded in your genetics, which were honed over the course of millions of years of evolution before it had any of those behaviors that we have now. They shouldn't be taken lightly.
Indeed. Wow. Very beautifully put, by the way, BTEX.
I like saying things like I had a lot of religious study when I was younger. I don't know, that kind of prose ends up kind of leaving a mark on you, I think.
Well, to be fair, regardless of what people think of religion, a lot of the time religion can teach quite a bit to a person. Whatever you want to take from it, something being around as long as it has been, you can throw a dart into a book of religious books. They all roughly will say quite a bit of wise stuff, but a lot of the stuff was passed down word of mouth for quite a while to people. So it's not like there's a bunch of BS in a lot of them, at least from what I think. Something there.
Yeah. It also might be worth clarifying. I identify as a secular humanist. I do have a cultural background of Catholicism and a lot of Lutheran-specific Bible study.
Okay.
just maybe for somebody that'll clarify things.
Maybe. I don't mean to get too philosophical there, so I don't mean to put you in a spot.
I like it. I really do enjoy it, though.
Indeed.
That is one of the things that seems to draw people to myself and DTech is they always say it's like, oh, you have really deep conversations. Yeah. Thank you. But I mean, depth is relative, right? If you talk like this all the time, it stops feeling so deep.
Well, I would say a lot of the time, even if it may not seem deep to you because you're in it all the time, but it's like being, let's say use art, for example, something you mentioned earlier. You may make great art all the time. Because of that, you're immune to what you only create. It's just a person. I drew this person 1,000 times. I've seen it 1,000 times. It means nothing. But to the person who's watching it, speaking as well as the same, it's a form of art. It means something to you. Well, technical difficulties, but the last statement I did make was, long story short, speaking is like a form of art. And when you do art for so long, you tend to forget and be immune to what you create. And so therefore, what other people see and what you create is different from what you see because you see it all the time. If you make the same person and draw it all the time, you could be like, oh, I've seen this 1,000 times. It's nothing. But the person who's viewing it, haven't seen that 1,000 times. That was the point I made before.
Yeah. And art from the insider's perspective versus the outsider's perspective, particularly wild. it's one thing to like be the artist to think of something, but the furries, they make some strong. And when it comes to the personas, the personal direct identification, I can speak for myself that like as a kid, I had a lot of this that related to anthropology style and still invasive 32 years. And in this community, it's artists have a special place and sway that space. So, yeah, you said it's very prevalent, especially.
Mm. Well, I'm going to ask the final couple of questions before we start wrapping this up. First of which is the name you use in VRChat, where to come from, and why to use it.
BTEX boy. So BTEX, if you guys Google it, it stands for benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, xylenes. Those are 4 of the most commonly synthesized chemicals in the entire world. They are petroleum products. So you derive them from crude petroleum. All of them are very commercially useful, and they're also generally all carcinogenic, including most particularly benzene. So it's very cheap, it's very prevalent, it's very useful, it's very toxic, and that describes me, now doesn't it?
I don't see you as toxic at all.
I didn't go to the ER, but it doesn't mean I never caused other people to not have to,
Well,
yeah, it's unfortunately making an impact on people. We all see ourselves as heroes and the anime protagonists in our lives, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you hurt people. We do the best we can, and we still hurt people.
As long as you learn from it.
Yeah, learning is one thing, but I don't really like seeing the people I like in suffering, and it's particularly more so when you're the cause of it. It's a little worse. But that's also a part of life, unfortunately, and that's something, like you said, as long as you learn from it, and sometimes as long as other people learn from it. It's don't get too hung up when it happens, though. Sometimes hurting people is inevitable and part of the game. And at least for the ER trips, they all signed waivers first, so
And the last and final question: the avatar you're in, why to use it, and is there anything about it that means anything to you?
I am a furry, but I'm really bad at being a furry. This is the Rex. This is one of the first kind of avatar bases that I got into. What I really am is a feline. I've been trying to go into a feline skin. I'm going to change my avatar if that's all right.
That's perfectly fine.
I chose the Rex for the interview, but I am very often in this skin as well. This is a little bit more vibrant, covered in chemicals and whatnot. I'm a cat. I don't know. One of my ex-girlfriends called me a cat one time, and I guess it just kind of stuck with me. So, but unfortunately, I'm a chemist. I don't have my background isn't strictly in computers, so I don't have the skills to make Unity. Make Unity projects extremely easy. They tend to be very time-consuming for me. I can figure it out, but I have other things to do. So. The Rex has a lot of resources, but I'm always trying to just find a more feline way. I can tell you, though, what I want to have. I want to have a Kung Fu cat in VRChat. I want to have this year with the stripes pulled down. I want to have a little bit of symbology, which I have to rework. I like the North Star symbol on the back. And a few other details like the cut eyebrows, some beauty marks, yada yada. And eventually I'm going to commission into an actual Sona and get a fursuit out of it. However, the fursuit's going to be a steel suit. I've committed to that. It's going to cost me a lot of money, take me a lot of time, but I'm going to do it.
Oh.
The only thing that's going to stop me is death.
Oh. Well, I hope you're able to make the steel suit you're looking for.
Oh. It'll be sometimes you can measure your success in the objects you leave behind after you die. And I think that one's going to cause a bit of a stir. It'll be a bit unique.
Oh, well, thank you very much, BTEX, for your time and allowing us to hear your story and everything and Degen Tech. So thank you greatly.
Thank you as well. This is I really like your work. This is a great thing that I think you're doing for the community. And I really hope you keep doing this. And if after our discussion last time, I did tell the people in Degen Tech about you, and I think one has already contacted you. But if you need some more people who are interesting, definitely know a few people there.
Well, we would love everyone in Degen Tech is invited. The way Raptor and I have found getting to know an entire community allows us a lot of insight in a lot of things. For like, I'm going to use filming as an example. We got to meet the people over Metacosm and Studio Penrose. If we were just to talk to the directors of both, you would hear one perspective. But by talking with each person in each layer, the person who writes the script, the person who does the fight coordination, the person who does the Unity and Blender work, you get to see a fuller picture of something. So everyone is invited.
Yep. Switching back to my other avatar.
And
oh, did it not switch?
And if the audience here wishes to reach out and find you or Degen Tech, where would they go?
We have a Discord. The short URL is DGTC, Delta Gamma Tango Charlie. So I believe it's discord.gg/DGTC. We also have our Blue Sky account. We have our YouTube account. We keep active. It's DegenTech Inc. And we have our monthly meetups on VRChat. So you can also contact me, BTEXBoy, which is BTEX, BTEX-BOI. There's also Apotek, APOTEK. We're also close affiliates with STEM VR. And just talk to some of the scientists on VRChat. Eventually they'll find you. Sometimes that's the way too.
Well, again, BTEX, thank you very much. And all of those links will be in the description right down that way, or in the episode descriptor of Spotify. So if you go that way, or hit expand more, and then there's a section called guest links. Everything will be there for one easy place for you, the audience member, to find. As always, as well as a bunch of other fun links and things down there for you as well. And if Future Lion sees this and remembers, put Apotex in there as well, because we talked about him. Maybe someone in the community, someone who watches this may not see it, so you can go over that way too. So at this point, we'll ask you, the audience, a question before we close things up, and Raptor's going to close it up, so I'll have to do that. So the question for you is, what is something from your childhood that has stuck with you? For me, it is the time playing D&D, and I remember a lot of it. One of my favorite stories is still the time I decided to play my first character, which was actually wasn't in D&D, it was a Age of Conan game, and I played a rogue, and the party didn't like me too much at the time, but I was also like 8, and I ended up hanging on the bottom of a carriage and went down the opposite direction of where we're supposed to go. And that has stuck with me, and I've just been hooked since. Fun fact. And the closing bit, we've talked a lot about a lot of things, and I think the best thing you can do, regardless of which, is, as BTEX here stated, treat each other with kindness, do nice things for people, and get to know someone. You never know what someone is going through or what you do means to others. It could be as simple as buying a coffee or paying the last $30 of someone's grocery bill, whatever it is. It could mean a lot. The butterfly effect is real sometimes. You mark my words there. And with that said, have a good rest of your day. See you in the metaverse, folks.
God damn, this box drives. Left turn. Take another left turn. And another left turn. I'm doing a circle jerk. Whoops. I shouldn't have said that out loud. What the hell? Whee! Come here, box. Let's move. Nice.